60 and WCCSradio.com. They are busily preparing here because this is a rare occasion. Marshall Chriswell is an actual human being who doesn't just appear by telephone. He's in the studio with us this morning. It's amazing. And this installment of Martial Law brought to you for informational purposes only. The information does not constitute legal advice. The law is constantly changing. The information may not be complete or correct depending on the date and your particular legal problem. Each legal problem depends on its individual facts, and different jurisdictions have different laws and regulations. Because of that, you should not act or rely on any information in this segment without seeking the advice of a competent attorney licensed to practice law in your jurisdiction for your particular problem, a guy like, say, Marshall Chriswell, who's in the studio with us this morning. And not only did he come in person, he brought with him someone who's, well, she's been here quite often in the past, Maria Jack. It's been a while since you've been here, too.
Yes, and I just wanted on record that I brought Marshall in this morning since he's always at home doing this.
You did. Yeah. Marshall, good morning to you.
It's nice to see you.
Well, it's good to have you in the studio with us for once, and so we can talk about this because this is an important topic that the two of you have brought to us today. We hear it all the time, scams. They're everywhere, including in your arena, when you talk about estate law, when you talk about real estate in general. And Maria brings a certain perspective to this as well. So let's discuss that, shall we?
Yeah, that's right. I thought it would be a great idea. Maria and I have discussed this for a while to have Maria come in and talk from her perspective about some of the different scams that she's seeing particularly related to real estate. And then, in my field, I see a lot of these things related to estate planning. And those are, subjects that we talk about a lot. And of course, Maria is the register and recorder here for Indiana County. So she deals with this on a daily basis.
Yeah, Maria, we might not think that would be the case, that you'd have to deal with that. By the time they got to you, the scam has already happened and you don't really have to deal with that. But they're everywhere, aren't they?
They are, and it's both. I hear them before it happens, fortunately, and then afterwards. And that's what brought Marshall finally, the two of us together, is because last week I had a woman who called my office to ask what direction she should take, and she did know of Marshall. She had used him before, so I was able to direct her back over to him. But I have an area in the office set up that shows all the different scams that are going around currently and in the past. And yes, they are mostly recorder of deeds, but when it comes to estate planning, you see a lot of that, and that seems to be what we're seeing lately because of some things that are going on around in the area.
Marshall, was that the case with this particular person?
That's absolutely the case, and it is, and in her, it was, an elderly woman and her husband who. They were invited via a postcard they got in the mail, and a lot of people get these, to come to a, quote, estate planning seminar. Mm-hmm. And most of the time, when you get an invitation to one of these things and it's not put on by it was very clear from the nature of the communication that this was not a licensed professional. It wasn't an attorney. It wasn't an investment advisor. But it was an outfit that essentially markets to older folks, promises them the moon and stars in terms of asset protection and tax avoidance and all these kinds of things. But ultimately, they're going to take your money, much more money than you would normally spend on an estate plan, and provide you little to no service in return.
So from a protection standpoint, the two of you can address this. Maria, what would you recommend for folks who don't know? They just simply don't know when somebody comes to them with some sort of proposal. In this case, something that arrived in the mail. It could be somebody on the telephone. Mm-hmm.
Now, I received this postcard also, and I wanted to go to the event, but I figured they'd turn me away because they vet people. The important thing is, I guess we're the first line, is my office. So call my office and ask us, and the girls will tell you. We are all the time on the lookout for documents that come in that appear to be fraud. And we've caught papers before where we've had notaries that weren't really notaries, or things were not legally done the way they were set up. So I have the power to refuse to record those. A new program that I have in my office is the software that we use there to record the documents offers a fraud alert program that people can sign up for, and they will get an email directly from my software. There's not an in-between person, so you don't have to worry about sharing your information. And the information that you share is so little, it's basically your name and your email address. And so if something comes across in my office that gets recorded, you are alerted to that, and then you can take whatever action if that's not something that you're aware of.
Right, and those types of real estate scams, I mean, those have become very prevalent in years. You have people that are actually selling someone else's property, right? They're and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Maria. I mean, they're creating deeds, maybe even recording them through an electronic system where they might not even have an original wet signature. It's a forged deed, and they're selling your real estate or obtaining a mortgage and actually obtaining cash based on your property. And Maria's program in the Recorder of Deeds office will alert you to that as soon as something happens, something that is recorded with respect to your parcel number or under your name. You're going to get an email alert.
We get national commercials now talking about somebody stealing your deed and stealing title to your land. Those are actually legitimate scams that are out there now.
And Maria could probably speak to that a little more than I can, but I know they exist. I know it's been a big problem in the eastern part of the state. The larger counties, Philadelphia County in particular, has had a rash of these types of illegal acts.
Maria, do people actually check up on their properties, or is it generally the only time you hear from them is when there's a transfer?
Generally, just when there's a transfer. Remember, people aren't used to dealing with this legal documents and the legal jargon. It's not something that they deal with day to day, whereas we do deal with it. So we can see little minute things in a recording that might draw our attention and say, hey, this doesn't look right. With more and more, we're going to e-recordings, which is basically copies sent over, and now e-notarizations, where you don't have to be in front of the notary or you don't have to be in front of your lawyer and you can sign things. And that really worries me. It's state law, but I, again, have the power to refuse those if we think that they look fishy. And I mean, this goes across the board to estates also, because there can be people that can come in and say that they're a member of the family and try to open an estate. And there's certain documents that we have to have in order for an estate to be opened. All the attorneys in this town are very well familiar with opening an estate. They're all good attorneys. You don't need to go out of town to get an attorney for estate planning, and unless you've won the lottery and have really big bucks. Most of the people in this town can just contact a local attorney who can easily set you up for a fee less than what you're going to pay by these scammers that are out there.
Yeah. Marshall, of course, that's solid advice. Anytime is to deal with people local who know the issues, know the town.
Yeah, and we've talked about that a lot. It really, in most cases, unless you've got a really specialized situation, in most cases, it's going to behoove you to have someone local that knows, whether it's the different offices at the courthouse and the local rules and local customs of Indiana County. But yeah, these scams are they really are a big problem. I know. I was just glancing. I saw the Pennsylvania Attorney General's office has an entire page now dedicated to scams related to trusts. I've attended kind of covertly attended one of these seminars, and you can't believe the kinds of things that the salespeople are promising these folks, and and folks are People are nervous. People are scared sometimes. Is the state going to take all my money when I die? Are my children going to get everything? Are the taxes going to eat up, everything that I've worked for? And those questions can be answered and some of those things mitigated by, a good estate planning attorney. But there's no pie in the sky answer. I think that's the biggest piece of advice that I would give is if something sounds too good to be true, it is, 100% of the time.
And there are people out there who will prey on what are your legitimate questions. You might have real concerns about, inheritances and disposal of property and trying to avoid having to pay excessive taxes and things like that. But for somebody to come in and say, well, let me handle that for you and I'll take care of it, and you don't even know who they are, that's a problematic situation.
Right. And by the way, give me $5,000 and your credit card number before you walk out the door. Yeah. Yeah.
What, that's a problem?
And you'd be surprised at how much one of these outfits how much income they can generate just in one afternoon at a local restaurant with some local people.
Yeah, well, I know when Maria said she had a section set up over in her office that is dedicated to scams, I wonder how many times in the last year you've had to expand that.
Yeah, it keeps growing. And Bob Manzi, the DA, also has his own area, and he tries to go to whatever senior events there are to address the issue, and has invited me to go along too. So I encourage people, if they're questioning what they're reading, if something's free on the surface, you're going to pay a lot more for your meal.
Free ain't free. Is this what we're saying?
Free ain't free. Yeah. So just call our office, and everyone should be getting in their tax bills the fraud alert information about signing up. You can do it yourself at home. And for those of you seniors who don't do internet, contact your children or your grandchildren, and they can set it up on their email and alert you if they get anything. It's very simple.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Marshall. So for folks who want your advice and want to set up an appointment with you to talk about estate planning, talk about real estate and all of those wonderful things, what should they be doing?
Sure. Anybody can contact my office at 724-465-5826. You can always stop and see us in the R&P building, the old R&P building, 655 Church Street here in Indiana, or go online to www.westernpalawyer.com.
Very good. Hey, thank you both for coming in today. This was fun.
This is great. Yeah, it was nice to see you in person.
Well, sorry, it's this face, but it's the only one I got. It is the voice of Indiana County. It's WCCS 101.1 FM, AM 1160, and WCCSradio.com. Fox News is next at the top of the hour. We follow that with news from our WCCS newsroom with Josh. And then Bob Walk of the Pirates is on the air with us in our next segment. It's Indiana in the Morning on WCCS.